Hey, everybody, we're going to pick up our conversation we started last week. So if you haven't listened to last week's episode, go back and listen to that episode, and then you can listen to this episode. This is part 2 of a 2-part series. I hope you enjoy. Welcome to The Friday Habit with Mark Labriola and Benjamin Manley. The Friday Habit is for small business owners, freelancers, and creatives who are ready to take their business to the next level. Join us as we discover how to apply the strategies we learned to grow our businesses, make more money, and live every day like it's Friday. I want to hear a little bit about this red wagon, because I think this idea of a lot of creatives, especially, they kind of drift throughout life, and they kind of feel that they're not really sure where to go, what to do. They're kind of bouncing from job to job or thing to thing, and they never really focus and move forward on anything because they're either afraid or they're unsure or they don't know where to start. And so, what can you share about that?
Well, first of all, let me just try to encourage people that, as you can probably tell already from our short time in this interview, that I was really just an average person. There was nothing significant about me that if you would have picked me out of a crowd, you wouldn't have said, hey, this guy is going to be successful or anything. So don't think that people are predestined for that, okay? Mm-hmm. And that's one of the reasons I wrote the book, is that I think there are a lot of people like me out there that are just average people, but we don't really know what our potential is because we assume that don't have the same chance or opportunity as the guy living in the big mansion up on the hill, right? When in fact we do if we will follow the right steps. And so the red wagon really serves as a metaphor, and it has several parts to it. And my point is that at different times in our life and for different things, we actually are different parts of that wagon. Many times, especially entrepreneurs, we want to have the handle, because the handle directs where everything is going. We want to be out front. And a lot of times we need to be out front. But there are times, especially if you're new into something or at different stages of your business, where somebody else needs to get the handle. And either you need to just get in and take a rest and ride as cargo and maybe learn some things, or maybe you just need to be the pusher. You know what? This person's got the vision for this particular deal. I can help them, but I'm just going to follow their lead, like I did in politics. Okay, I followed somebody else's lead. Or when you seek out mentors. Okay, when you seek out mentors, which I really encourage, then you need to make sure in your conversations with them that they're leading, right? That you're paying attention to them and you're soaking all of that in. And so what happens is, especially as entrepreneurs and stuff, sometimes we think once we get a hold of the handle, then we need to have the handle in every situation for everything. And that's where you can make a mistake. Even in a small organization, talking about Ben, you and he probably have some different skill sets, right? Mm-hmm. Where therefore there are some things that obviously Ben needs to have the handle on, and you're just pushing, or maybe you're just riding along, whatever, and vice versa, right? And people have to realize that. Mm-hmm. One of the challenges we have in small businesses and startup businesses is that the entrepreneur thinks he or she has to be every single thing to all people. And they may have to be a part of it getting started, but they quickly, if they're going to really be successful, they quickly have to bring other either technology or people or advisors in to help them with that. And they have to take another spot in the wagon. And it's okay to do that. You have to have enough confidence that you don't have to have the handle all the time, but still believe that the wagon's going in the right direction.
Hmm. Yeah, and for those of you who are listening, the book that we're referencing is Life Lessons from the Little Red Wagon, 15 Ways to Take Charge and Create a Path to Success. So that's Ron's book that just came out. It's out, right?
Yep, it's out. It's been doing great. Also, people, I do a lot of listening to books, although this one's got it's got a cool cover, so that's kind of neat. But I'm the only person that I know of that has Ronald Reagan reading a part of his book.
That's pretty cool.
So I'll just leave that as a little tease.
Yeah, like, hey, maybe we need to go in there and listen to it.
He definitely does read a part of my book. And then also I was very, very proud to have, a lot of your listeners will know John Maxwell, who is a leadership author and fortunate enough to be a friend of mine. And he wrote the foreword or the introduction to my book. And I've learned a lot from John over the years. He's been one of my mentors, not only him personally, but his books as well. So if people have the opportunity to get his materials, I would really, really encourage that from a leadership standpoint.
So can you elaborate a little bit on this ACT philosophy? I was kind of looking into some of your stuff, and ACT is action, consider, takeaway. How has that played a role in your success?
Yeah, well, I forget, I probably didn't come up with those words. Somebody else probably came up with them over time. But I've tried to live by that, in that in every situation that comes about, whether it's in raising your children and you're going through a scenario, or it's starting your business or your job, or even your relationships like we talked about earlier, I think that in order for us to really understand a situation, we have to step back and evaluate it. And you'll notice in my ACT things, I've asked people, really the action part is really just kind of, okay, let's write down this, where we are on this, or let's write down, times that we maybe took the wrong turn or whatever. And then, because once it's written down, I don't care if it's in your phone or on a piece of paper, whatever you do, but it has to be something that you visually see. We know one of the things that's happened to us, Mark, is we don't use all our senses anymore, And so when we see something with our eyes that processes in our brain, it's different than when we hear it in our ears, right? And so this have to see it physically. And then what I want people to do is, one of the number one things I learned from some of my mentors over time is just to take time to consider it. Take some time. There's a book that John Maxwell wrote called Thinking for a Change. And it's really not about thinking about changing. It's thinking for a change, because we spend our time doing instead of thinking. And so take some time to consider that. And then what's the takeaway from that you can either improve on next time, or maybe it's that next uncomfortable step. And so I've tried to look at ACT through all anytime I'm considering something, or anytime I've just gone through something, then I want to put that down and go through that process for myself.
That's really good. I have a hard time setting goals, because I feel like, I don't know, I guess there's been throughout my, business career, owning and starting an agency, a lot of times I would stress out and I would have a goal or whatever, and just things weren't clicking, and I'd be obsessed about it and just be worried about, how things are going to work out. And then things would work out, maybe not the way that I thought, but they would, kind of work out. And, earlier you mentioned that, you're a man of faith, and that's what gotten you through a lot of, things in your life. How do you, as like, because I feel like in the entrepreneur culture, there's just this very like take control and, get the numbers and hustle and grind and crush and wake up at 4 and take your cold ice bath and, do all these things. But then as a person of faith, there's an element of me just trusting that there's a God who cares about me, and that he has a plan, and that he's in control, and that he can grow the business or shrink the business based off of, wherever he wants me in life.
Well, certainly in the big picture, that's the case, and that he is in control and what have you. But there's not a God of sitting on our butts either, for lack of a better term. And so what I tell people is to try to focus less on goals, but focus more on, and you might think there's nuance, but focus more on what is your big picture reason, all right? Whatever you want to call that. What's the vision? What's the dream? Whatever you want to call it. But what's the big picture vision? Why are you in business for yourself, right? It's not just to be in business. Like my big picture vision, you probably already guessed, was I wanted to be financially secure. I wanted not to have financial mediocrity. Because I experienced that. That was very, very important for me. So that was always the big thing. Now, over time, as you accomplish that, you reassess and okay, now, like by the time I went into politics, I had accomplished that. So then then I wanted to be an example to the people that I influenced about serving something, serving a community or something bigger than yourself. But what you'll find is if you focus on the reason that you're doing it, I'm talking about the real reason. Why does Mark have a creative agency? What's the real reason he does it? It could be very personal. It could be even broader than that. But then once you have the reason, for it, and you know what it looks like or what you would like for it to look like, then you go about putting together a plan to make that happen. And so once you put together a plan to make that happen, then it's really just about executing on the plan. So you might get tired of chasing goals, but you won't ever get tired of chasing your reason. Right. You just don't do that because that's down. It's in here with us, Mark. It's not, a goal is usually here, right?
It's in your head.
But the reason is here. So the reason is and maybe you have to have some temporary goals because that's part of the way to the reason, but it's mainly about the reason, planning to make that reason happen, and then executing on that.
So then, there seems to be so much like economic uncertainty right now. A lot of stuff's going on, wars and pandemics and interest rates is all the talk right now. When you have a plan, what does that look like when you have so much uncertainty and other things going on? I mean, what is your thoughts or encouragement to pivot or, stay focused?
Yeah. Well, no question about it. Plans are in sand and reasons are in concrete. So, I mean, you have to understand it. You have to reassess your plan with whatever the current situation is. Now, you have to make sure that the current situation is not very temporary, where you don't want to react too quickly. So you have to evaluate that within your own business or whatever it is that you're doing, right? It's like when your wife and yourself have an argument, and your reason, one of your big dreams out here is to make sure y'all stay married, forever. You have an argument, you don't automatically think, well, okay, my plan was, we were going to stay together, but now we had an argument, so we're going to get a divorce. It's temporary, right? And so a lot of times that's the way it is in business. And so what I tell people to just relax, pay attention to what's going on and make minor adjustments if you have to. Don't overcommit during a time where there's uncertainty. That's one of the big things that I want to make sure people understand. But if you have a strong enough reason and you've got a good plan, then I would just continue executing on that plan. In the investment world that I was in, markets, up and down, up and down, up and down. And there were many times when I would have some of my partners come to me and say, okay, the market's never, ever going to recover, ever. Okay, this is it. This is the one time in the history of mankind things don't come back. And I would, not that I wasn't worried about that in the back of my mind, but I would say, you know what, we're going to ride this out. Now, we're not going to do anything stupid. We're not going to go take on a bunch of debt right now, which I would totally encourage people not to do right now. Do not take on a bunch of debt right now. But also, don't sit back and worry about things that you can't control. Just continue executing on your plan. Because if you have a good idea, a good business, it's going to be a good business. And somebody else might end up executing on it because you didn't, but it's going to be a good business.
You'd mentioned earlier about having a mentor. What do you think are like key qualities when you're looking for a mentor? Because I think that's one thing that a lot of small business owners or creatives, they're nose to the grindstone. They're working in their business. They're not working on their business, and they don't have time to think about these other things that may benefit them wisely.
Oh, and they definitely have to think about them, or otherwise they'll be owned by their job and not own their job, right? So you don't want to get to that point. What I look for, and this took me time to do this, this developed over years. First of all, I look for mentors in different areas. I don't have any one mentor that I look to for everything. So in my life, I look for people that I might want to talk to about relationships, have people certainly I want to talk to about finances, people I want to talk to if I've got a business, depending on what business idea I'm working on, politics or, public service is one, and then my faith. So I'll look, and what I look for in people like that is all who have skins on the wall in that particular area. Like I'm not, if I want to talk about relationships, I'm sorry, I'm just not going to seek someone that has had broken relationships.
Yeah, they're on their third divorce.
I want someone. Yeah, I'm just not going to. It's not means they're bad people. If I want to talk about finances, I want to talk to people that have more on the tree than I do. Okay, and that's changed for me over time. Same way in faith, same way in politics or public service. So I look for multiple mentors. A lot of people want to find one mentor and talk to them about everything, and that's not good. Also, this is a note to self. Your wife is not your mentor. Your spouse is not your mentor. They can be your sounding board, okay, but they're not your mentor, right? That's for someone that can be objective with you. Our spouses can't be objective with us.
Right.
And so we have to look for people outside of that. And I would tell you, Mark, that most entrepreneurs, I get it. They're no to the grindstone. But the mistake I made, and I would hope for people I could encourage not to make this mistake, is really, really take some time to do those really important things like sitting down with a mentor, probably once a quarter if you're kind of early in your business. I do it more like once a year or so now. And also taking time to make sure that you continue to educate yourself. Like personal development is really important. Whether that's reading or listening to books or podcasts, whatever, kind of like what you guys are doing for people. That's so important because you don't realize. And I'd had some of this when we were in full blow mode in our investment business. I was so focused on that. I didn't take time to think about anything else around me, and I feel like as a person, I lost some of myself in that, right? I wasn't progressing as a person during that time.
Yeah, that makes sense. I've never heard that either. Like having a mentor in these different areas, like finding people who are experts in these verticals, whether it's relationship, your faith, business, whatever that is. That makes so much sense to me. Like I don't know why I never thought about that before. But tell us a little bit about your book. I want to hear kind of what got you to thinking about writing a book, like why you wrote it, and then, how you decided what knowledge you wanted to kind of put into that book.
Yeah, sure. Well, I think a lot of people, as we get in different stages of our life, we look back on it. And, I've been blessed beyond, anything I would have ever deserved and what have you. And now all of my kids are adults, so you look through the world with a different prism. And I have 6 grandkids now, so you kind of look at those little guys and gals and think about it. And I guess what I just thought, and I don't want it to come across as egotistical because that's not the reason. I thought that when I look back on my life, again, as we said earlier, there wasn't really anything special about the way I grew up. My mom and dad, were school teachers from rural Louisiana. My brother and my sister and my younger brother, we just were just kids, none of us were star athletes, outside of maybe a small high school, and none of us had great inventions or anything like that. But yet the kids have been reasonably successful, and I've been very well blessed. And when I look back on it, I thought, you know what? There are a lot of people out there just like me. There's a Ron Simmons that's 20 years old that's trying to figure out what to do, or there's one at 30 years old that's figuring out what to do. And so my goal in this book was to, first of all, teach through stories. And just through the stories of my life, which I think there's probably something there that everybody can relate to, because if they grew up in a normal situation, then you could, they relate to that. Half the people in America's parents were divorced. So that in itself is something that holds a lot of people back, their parents getting a divorce. And it's, and I will grant you that when your parents get a divorce, no matter how old you are, it has an effect on you. That does not go away. All right. To this day, I still think it has an effect on our family as of what we all hoped it would be. And my dad has been married to his second wife for 40 years.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's not, but that's just the way it is. And so the other thing that I wanted to be in this book, and it's really the number one comment I've received back, is transparent. You know, one of the things I talk about, but my last political race that I ran, I lost. All right. And so dealing with things that don't turn out exactly how you want them to is also important. And I thought people needed to see that. So we really start the book kind of out talking about loss and disappointment and what that means and how do you deal with that. And especially after, you know, people that have kind of had a pretty good run of success, losing is not something that goes over that well. And so, what I found out, Mark, is that yes, I was bothered by losing that race, although I had served plenty, okay? I was actually, as I got away from it and thought about it, I was really more disappointed in how disappointed I was in losing. I did not internally, I didn't do anything externally, but I didn't internally handle that as well as I should have, and that was very disappointing to me. And so I needed to assess, why was that? What caused me to be so disappointed in something that it was important, but it wasn't eternal?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so I think people like the transparency because they don't see, you don't see transparency on Instagram. You don't see transparency much in our political leaders or in our media. So I think that relates to people.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think there's so many times where, we as individuals just hunger for that authenticity and transparency. And because we're not getting that anywhere else, and then when you do get online, it appears that everyone has a perfect life and a great business and, are so successful. Yeah. And then you feel like something's wrong with you. And so there's.
Yeah, you're the only one that's, I hear it. And we have our struggles in our family today, just like everybody, does, whatever they happen to be or whatever it is that we're going through. One of the things at the end of the book and our epilogue, our life's moving along and whatever, and all of a sudden, Lisa and I both, within a few months, got diagnosed with cancer. And it's just one of those things, right, that just kind of hits you that you don't plan for. I mean, it wasn't something that was a history in our family, so we really didn't think about it that much. And we're doing well, but it was just something that, you got to, okay, that's a new one. What does that mean? How are you going to react to this one, big boy? And but it's just life, right? It's just life. I mean, the rain falls on the just and the unjust.
Yeah. So, what would be your advice to somebody then? I feel like there's this theme of when you face challenges, how do you respond to those? I'm assuming too in your financial business that it wasn't always rainbows and sunshine, for 30 years of just hockey stick growth. And so what were the things that you've learned over the years to help you like overcome challenges or stay positive or keep moving forward?
Yeah. Well, I don't know that I probably wasn't always positive at that particular times, but I think I was always sure of our reason for doing what we were doing, right? Our kind of big picture. I was always sure of that. I guess occasionally we would review that to make sure that, okay, are we still on the right path here? Is this still, what does it look like in the future, right? Now, our business, it was pretty easy to know that. It was unique in that we knew that as long as there were commercial airline pilots flying, that eventually they would retire, okay? Now, at one time, they moved that retirement age from 60 to 65. So there was a 5-year period where very few people retired. And we did get some advance notice of that happening. So we had to ask ourselves, and this brings up the good point there, Mark, and that was a time where we had to say, okay, we're going to have pretty slow growth, if any, okay, over the next 5 years. Do we need to diversify our business some more, or can we stay the course, improve on, be more efficient in what we do, and we know it's going to come out the other side, right? We know it's a timing issue.
Right.
It's not a business issue. It's a timing issue. But it allowed us. We did do some things that made us more efficient. We've probably gotten a little fat by that time in our expenses and things like that. But it honed us in, and then we came out of it. We were even better than we were before. But what I found is that if you again will make sure that the reason you're doing is still there, then you can generally get through the tough times.
That's encouraging. Well, man, I feel like this has gone by so quickly.
Goes by quick.
We're just hanging out talking. Well, if people wanted to connect with you and find out more about your book and whatnot, where should they go?
Well, they can first of all, they can get the book anywhere books are sold: Amazon, Barnes and Noble, obviously Audible for the Ronald Reagan piece, and then they can get me at ronsimmons.com. Ronsimmons.com is my website, and you can email me at ron@ronsimmons.com. I love talking to people. I've gotten lots of emails and stuff. People just asking questions and things like that, and love to be able to communicate with them and help them in any way that I can. If they've I do some business consulting, so if they have some interest in talking to me about that, I'm happy to visit with them on that as well.
Great. And if you could leave our listeners maybe with one action item, Ben and I usually like to tell people, hey, starting next week, just focus on this one thing. And what would be that one thing that you would tell somebody to maybe focus on to maybe improve their personal life or their business or whatever?
Well, the one thing that I would tell people to focus on, and they should do, and this is hard to do, okay, it was hard for me, is to take 1 hour a week and do nothing but think. That means you got to go away. You got to get yourself in a position. You can't have your phone. You can't be in your office. You got to go away and think. I do bring a scratch pad, because things come to your mind. If at my age you might forget them, you probably wouldn't, but I do. And I just take an hour. And if you can't do an hour, do 30 minutes, okay? And maybe it'd be an hour the next week. But just go away and think. That was the number one advice that John Maxwell gave me as I was building my business and then also deciding about career deals, is just going away and in the quiet of the evening or morning or middle of, whenever it is, I don't care when it is, just get yourself in a place where you can just think. And your mind will be so clear and so ability to do things that you would never believe.
Man, it's so funny because as easy as that sounds, I know how hard it is to sit for an hour and just think.
Yeah, it's rejuvenating to you as well.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah, for sure. Well, hey, thanks so much for being on the show. And thank you for listening to The Friday Habit. If you go to thefridayhabit.com, you can find show notes for this episode. There you can also find links to our websites and ways to get in touch. And at the bottom of the page, you can download our guide to the Friday Habit system that will show you how to set aside one full day each week dedicated to working on your business instead of in your business. So until next time, remember, live every day like it's Friday.